This is Logan Thomas, tight end for the Washington Commanders, and you're listening to the Best Bell Fantasy Podcast.
And welcome into a special edition of the Best Bell Fantasy Podcast. I'm Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. Gonna jump right into the waiver wire for week 4. The number one priority ad for any league is Khalil Herbert, running back for the Chicago Bears. This is a second-year player who flashed a little bit in year 1 in David Montgomery's absence. Looking at the games in 2021 where Khalil Herbert got 18 carries, we saw him get 7.5 fantasy points, 19.2, 18.3, and 8.8. Okay, that's at least 18 carries in those games. So in 2 of the games, he was nearly 20 points. 2 of those games, he was 7, 8 points. What you're going to get is a floor of about 7 or 8 PPR fantasy points. You can get up to a 20-point ceiling. And you're like, well, what kind of defenses was Khalil Herbert playing against last year? Well, let me tell you, he played against Vegas, an underrated rushing defense last year. And in fact, that game where he had 18 carries in week 5, only 50% of the snaps. So fast forward to the next week against Green Bay, one of the better defenses in the NFL. 19 carries, 19 fantasy points, 112 total yards. He doesn't catch many passes, but what he does do is just bulldoze defenses, and that's what happened in week 7, where he was the only player to rush for over 100 yards last year against Tampa Bay, at least up until that point. Week 7, 18 carries, 2 red zone carries, 133 total yards, 5 receptions against Tampa Bay, and then 17 carries or 23 carries followed up, 4 of them in the red zone, 68 total yards against San Francisco. Once again, a tough defense. So you want to be picking up Khalil Herbert. His past production indicates a floor and a ceiling that's very interesting. And then when David Montgomery went out in this past game, he had been previously playing in weeks 1 and 2, only 19, 20, all the way up to 30% snap shares. But when David Montgomery was out, he played 60% of snaps. He got 20 carries, 5 red zone carries, fell into the end zone 2 times, 31 fantasy points in PPR. Once again, only 2 receptions. So Khalil Herbert is a priority ad. He needs to be your number one priority off of the waiver wire. Chips in on the bids. This is a 70, 80 plus percent. I wouldn't fault you if you put 100% of your fab to make sure you got Khalil Herbert moving forward. This is a player who could change the game over the next couple of weeks. And what's key to know about the Bears is that they are the highest run over expectation team in the NFL, and they will continue to be that. Justin Fields has thrown for fewer passes this season through 3 games than Josh Allen threw in just week 3. So yes, Khalil Herbert, because of the volume at the running back position, and some may argue that he is more talented than David Montgomery. I'm not going to argue one way or the other. I'm putting it out there. I'll let the talking heads argue whether Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery are actually the better running backs. Doesn't matter. The reality is Khalil Herbert is going to be the lead back for the Chicago Bears on a run-centric offense. Now let's get into the second major waiver wire pickup. If Jamal Williams is still somehow on your waiver wire, you need to be picking him up. Dan Campbell all but said that Jamal Williams is going to be the lead back and that it's not going to be DeAndre Swift for the next 2 weeks plus the bye. Jamal Williams, we know, is your every year running back 36. He's going to get you 7 to 10 fantasy points a game, but through the first 3 weeks, Jamal Williams is the running back 8 on the season. Running back 8 in fantasy points per game, 15.9 fantasy points, 4 total touchdowns, but he's doing the same plotting that he's done the last few years. Yards per carry, 4.3, 4.2, 3.9 last year, and 3.9 so far this year. It is trending that way, but Jamal Williams, he has a nose for the end zone. He's used around the goal line. The Lions have pulled DeAndre Swift off of goal line duties to make sure that Jamal Williams is the one getting in for the scores. And we know how powerful and dynamic this Detroit offense is. We've seen Amon-Ra St. Brown get deep. DJ Chark spread the field. This offense is different. TJ Hawkinson is able to spread the field. There are weapons on this offense, and Jared Goff can get the ball to these weapons. And over the next few weeks, up until the bye, the next 2 weeks, Jamal Williams needs to be your number 2 priority add. He's not going to add a lot in the receiving game. We have seen him used in Green Bay that way. Maybe he takes on a bigger role in the passing game, maybe a little bit more DeAndre Swift. Like looking at last year in 2021, when Swift is out, we did see 3 games where Jamal Williams ran 10 or more routes. There were 2 games where Jamal Williams had 5 or more receptions. So yes, Jamal Williams is a priority add for the next 2 weeks. I would not be putting as much fab behind Jamal Williams as Khalil Herbert, because we know definitively Jamal Williams is going to not be the lead back after the bye in week 7, and the bye is in week 6. So you're going to have to plan around that anyways. He's going to be sticking around on your bench. So you are renting a running back for Jamal Williams, but he's already the RB8 on the season. It is touchdown inflated, but they're giving him goal line work, and the Lions are going to continue to be in shootouts. So I'm not worried about, he's just lucky at touchdowns. He may experience a lot of touchdown variance, but the ceiling exists there, and we've seen that through the first 2 weeks for Jamal Williams. Priority waiver number 3, wide receiver Romeo Doubs. And Doubs was a 4th round pick this year in Green Bay. I've started to change my tune a little bit on Romeo Doubs. I've already been out on Allen Lazard. You can go back. I've been on record saying Allen Lazard is not the answer here. But maybe it's Romeo Doubs. Through 3 games, he has 16 targets, 14 receptions, 10 yards a target. He's caught a touchdown already. He was the wide receiver 9 in week 3 against Jamel Dean. This was a breakout game. 8 catches, 8 targets, 2 targets in the red zone. One of them converted for a touchdown. 73 receiving yards. That's what you want from a leading receiver. Now, this is probably a ceiling game coming off of Tampa Bay. So this is why he's waiver priority number 3. There is risk that the Green Bay Packers will continue to spread the ball around. But Romeo Doubs is built like a dude, 6'2", 204. He had mid-range metrics, 50th percentile 40-yard dash, 60th percentile speed score, yards per reception in college, 15.6. So he can get down the field, and he commanded a 25% target share in college. So this is a player who can make it happen, but he's a rookie on Aaron Rodgers' offense that likes to spread the ball around. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon didn't get going in week 3 against Tampa Bay. Instead, it was Aaron Rodgers targeting Allen Lazard and Romeo Doubs, making the offense click. So moving forward, you do want Romeo Doubs as a bench player in most leagues. You want to add him off of waivers just in case that ascension continues. I don't think he's flex worthy at this point in most leagues. However, you don't want your league mates to have him if he breaks out. This is, if we get 2 weeks in a row from Romeo Doubs, you don't want to be the last one standing. So this is a preemptive move to make sure that you're getting a possible lead receiver for the Green Bay Packers. Waiver priority number 4, Zay Jones. I'm kicking myself because I was about to write up Zay Jones as my breakout player for week 3. in my fantasy data article for rankings versus expert consensus. And I didn't. And I reneged on it, and I went with Ashton Dulin, and Dulin busted, and it was Zay Jones. But I had reasons why. Zay Jones was playing all the snaps. He was getting the yards per route run that we liked. He was getting the yards per reception that was going to the tight ends last year. And now Zay Jones through 3 games, 24 targets, 19 receptions. He's the wide receiver 29 on the season. He was wide receiver 5 last week in full PPR, 85 receiving yards, 10 catches on 11 targets. He had 9 targets in week 1. So that's 20 targets in 2 weeks. He's playing 70% plus snap share. And that was against Asante Samuel. You know, in Los Angeles Chargers, Asante Samuel. I know this game got out of hand for the Chargers, and that things that are going really right for Jacksonville. But Zay Jones is getting the targets. Marvin Jones got the touchdown. Sure, whatever. Zay Jones has the stickier stats. He's had 2 big games of targets. And in a full PPR, Zay Jones could be a flex consideration. I mean, 2 of the last 3 weeks, he's been a top 32 wide receiver in full PPR. So that's the type of player that's going to be a difference maker and cheap off the waiver wire. I mean, Zay Jones in college. Let's just remember he was a 2nd-round pick back out of Buffalo. And then it bounced around. Finally, Zay Jones lands in Jacksonville. He's got good metrics, 80th percentile speed. He's very bursty. He's agile. He's got a wide catch rate, 6'2", 201. He's not a small dude. He had a 40% target share in college. Dude was just a catching machine. And now that he's on Jacksonville, where Trevor Lawrence is going to be throwing the ball to ETN, to Zay Jones, Shenault is off the team. Let's remember, though, that target share, that 20% target share from Laviska Shenault, now out of Jacksonville. Christian Kirk is crushing, but Zay Jones is keeping teams honest because they need to defend him. He's going to make them pay. And so you want to make sure that Zay Jones, who is a low ADOT wide receiver, but a high target wide receiver, he's a safety valve for Trevor Lawrence. You want to make sure you have him in PPR, and I wouldn't even mind having him as waiver priority 3 over Romeo Doubs if that's your preference. My 5th waiver priority is Greg Dortch. And this is a short-term priority, not because I hate Greg Dortch, but it's the reality that Rondell Moore is going to come back eventually. And this was the role that Rondell Moore was supposed to take. Greg Dortch is built like Rondell Moore. If you look, Greg Dortch, 5'7", 173 pounds out of the slot, whereas Rondell Moore, 5'7", 181 pounds. They're virtually the same player, except Rondell Moore is faster. He's burstier. He's more agile. He's got a wider catch radius. His comps are so much better than Greg Dortch. Like Dortch's comps, like Trent Taylor, according to playerprofiler.com, whereas Rondell Moore's T.Y. Hilton. The problem with Rondell Moore is he's not staying healthy. He's not staying on the field, and Greg Dortch is delivering. Okay, like coming into this season, Greg Dortch, he played 2 games in 2019, didn't play at all in 2020, played 5 games in 2021, and now comes into 2022 not finishing below wide receiver 29 each week for 3 weeks. Wide receiver 29, 22, and 19. 63, 55, and 80 receiving yards, 9 targets, 4 targets, 10 targets. Like I was talking about Zay Jones, as long as Rondell Moore is out, Greg Dortch does become a flex consideration, and probably a stronger flex consideration than Jones or Doubs. He does lack the upside. He is a short, not just a short receiver, but his receptions are short. His yards per reception, 9.9, right? 63 receiving yards on 9 targets, 7 yards per target. That was week 1. 80 receiving yards on 10 targets, 8 yards per target, right? This is a low ADOT type of player. Reality is Greg Dortch is a PPR play, not a half PPR play. But as long as Rondell Moore is out, he should be a flex consideration for you. My 6th waiver priority is tight end David Njoku, and it might be too late. It might be too late on David Njoku. We saw the breakout coming. He's got all the metrics. Former first-round pick. He's got the pedigree. He's running the routes like tight end ones should. And he set a career high in targets last week. 10 targets, 9 receptions. He got the touchdown. He had 3 red zone targets. 3 of his 10 targets were in the red zone. 89 receiving yards. He finishes the tight end 2 on the week. If we look back in 2021, he finishes the tight end 2 back in week 5. And he had a few other single-digit performances. Tight end 7 in week 17. Tight end 9 in week 12. This was with Baker Mayfield, who could barely throw the ball because of the fractured shoulder, okay? And we saw the ceiling this week, week 3, against Pittsburgh, finally hitting. So this is, if you need a tight end, if you're struggling at tight end, this is a chips in type of tight end that you could make the argument. If you're good at running back, if you're good at wide receiver, he might be your number 1 priority if you need a tight end. He's got a ceiling, and as we've seen, he's got his floor is as low as other back end tight end ones, but his ceiling is the tight end 1 overall. Well, tight end 2, I suppose. So the tight end 2 overall for David Njoku is his ceiling right now. We've seen it numerous times. And with Jacoby Brissett, who looked better on Thursday night, like if you watch the tape, Jacoby Brissett wasn't dinking and dunking and just like, oh, should I get it there? He was stepping back, he was launching, and he was pushing the ball down the field to Njoku and Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, what a revelation, by the way. So David Njoku is on some waiver wires. According to ESPN's waiver wire, he's 32% rostered. I would recommend tripling that. I don't think there are very many fantasy teams or leagues where David Njoku should not be rostered. Can't think of very many. So prioritize David Njoku for your waiver wire. The last waiver priority at the tight end position is Tyler Conklin. And Conklin is one of those surprising tight ends. Well, not surprising to me because I've been a tight end Conklin truther. You can ask Billy Musio at him, at FF Musio. He has receipts. I'm a Conklin truther. I was watching Conklin film a year and a half ago. He's the type of tight end that is just going to gobble up targets. Like, why are the Jets paying CJ Uzama? I don't know. The reality is Tyler Conklin is getting the targets. Looking at he's the tight end 3 on the season. Like, he's gotten 24 targets. He's averaging 8 targets a game. That's Tyler Higbee level. That's Mark Andrews level. That's Travis Kelce level. 7, 9, and 8 targets. But last week, 84 receiving yards, only 17 air yards. So not targeting deep down the field. I wonder how Zach Wilson is going to use him. This is why he's not as high of a priority ad, because things can change quickly with the change in quarterback and the change in scheme based on what Zach Wilson likes to do. Zach Wilson likes to throw the ball down the field, and he's accurate deep down the field. That does not fit with what Conklin has been doing. 7 air yards, 42 air yards, and 17 air yards. So I recommend Tyler Conklin if Joe Flacco plays. Now, we don't know at this time. It's not official whether Zach Wilson is going to get the start, but Joe Flacco, as long as he is the quarterback, you need to have Tyler Conklin as a back-end tight end 1 consideration. And his ceiling is, as we saw in week 3, tight end 4 for the week. The final waiver priority needs to be Trevor Lawrence. If Trevor Lawrence still on your waiver wire. Shame on your league. Shame on your league mates. Trevor Lawrence, we've seen the breakout now. Through 3 weeks, 42, 30, 39 attempts. But the Jaguars are cruising. Yes, week 1, he finished his quarterback 24, but he's finished his quarterback 12 and quarterback 4 each of the last 2 weeks. He hasn't needed to do much on the ground, only 22 rushing yards. So he's not getting it done mostly from the he's getting it mostly done from the pocket. 250 plus yards in 2 of the 3 games. He finished 235 against the Colts defense, which is usually pretty tough. But that was also in a huge blow. It was 24-0. So there wasn't a need to push the ball. In fact, the last 2 games have been pretty solid for Lawrence. He's been dealing. And if you're stacking Zay Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk, that was a really cheap stack to attack this offseason. So consider Trevor Lawrence if you're needing a quarterback. If for some reason, you've got your Dak Prescott rostered and you've been streaming, Trevor Lawrence is not streamable. He is startable. He's not just Marcus Mariota level. Okay. Trevor Lawrence can get there. Okay. Now, if you really want a deep streamer, I'm going to throw Marcus Mariota your way. He can run. He can pass. He's got Drake London and Kyle Pitts. We saw both London and Pitts get significantly involved. London had the touchdown. Pitts had 80-plus receiving yards last week. So if you want a deeper ad, Marcus Mariota streamer, but Trevor Lawrence needs to be rostered and considered for starting moving forward. If you like this content, give me a like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. Really appreciate your feedback. And I'll be chopping these up into individual player takes. So I appreciate your interaction with these videos as well. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. And hopefully this was a helpful video for you. If it was, give a like, give the subscribe. I love your support. Thanks so much. And until next time, good luck in the fantasy football streets, everybody.